All right, everybody. Welcome. I'm select person, Christine Vitale. The town charter went into effect today, so we have gender neutral terms in the charter, so that may take some getting used to. But I want to welcome you all. I want to thank the library for hosting us tonight. Thank the Fairfield Safe Streets Alliance for putting this program forward. A number of the members are in the audience today, and I want them all just to kind of raise their hand and give a quick introduction. Lisa, why don't you start? Raise your hand.
Hi, I'm Lisa Clare, Communications Director. Thank you all for coming.
Lisa Clare, our Communications Director.
Rachel Chapa, Director of Communications for Fairfield Public Schools. Thanks for coming.
Scott is on the town library.
Me? Yeah. Jenna Wellington, Public Information Officer for Fairfield PD.
Oh, Santina.
Santina Duranco and Emma Sharp from the Health Department.
And we have some other members from on the panel, which I will now introduce. Actually, before I go to the introductions of the panel, just thank you all for coming. Just a little bit of brief context for this. We've been hearing a lot of concerns from residents and from parents about the use and dangers of e-bikes and e-scooters, especially for our young people, middle schoolers and high schoolers who may not have their driver's license yet, don't know the rules of the road, are driving around, and we've seen many dangerous situations. And out of concern for their safety, and as well as the safety of other people on the roads and on sidewalks, we thought it was important to bring people together, bring the experts together, and just give everybody some more information about the injuries related that we're seeing, speeding concerns, the dangers of lithium battery fires, and safety around our schools. And we have a wonderful panel with us here of experts tonight. Sergeant Michael Kung, Lieutenant Mike Stahl, Deputy Fire Chief Patrick Barry, Dr. Douglas Latham, Bridgeport Hospital, PA Jackie Rizzatelli from St. Vincent's. We have the chair of the Bike Ped Committee, Sarah Mason, and Charlie Gander, who is the owner of Cycle Dynamics. And we also is Ryan Uzo from the Injury Prevention Team, Bridgeport Hospital, over there. I want to thank you all for joining us. In addition, we have our Superintendent of Schools here, Mr. Michael Tostani, and Principal of Roger Logan Middle School, Nick Tiley. We thank them both for being here and supporting us in these efforts in keeping our children and our community safe. Anybody else I'm missing? Any of our state reps? They were invited, but I know they had conflicts tonight. If they come in, I'll let you know. All right, so the outline for tonight, the purpose is to just educate you, create community awareness, and hopefully prevent injuries if you or your children choose to use e-bikes or e-scooters. We're going to hear from our presenters, then we're going to show you a couple quick videos, and then there'll be time for question and answers. And with that, I'm going to kick it off. Thank you all.
Really quick before they start, I'm going to pass some of these note cards down. If you guys think of any questions that you want asked during this presentation, please feel free to find me or Lisa, and we'll grab them, and that way we can make sure your questions are answered.
And Representative Sarah Kitt also just joined us, and you're done with me now.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you all for being here. At the police department, a lot of what we focus on is how can we prevent these types of incidents. So we're seeing an increase in the amount of e-bikes that are out there, and coincidentally with that, the amount of accidents or crashes and injuries resulting. So as you probably see on the screen there, that predictability is what we use to kind of prevent the crashes. It's when riders are entering the roads unexpectedly, driving too fast, whether it's just in general for the conditions of the roadway, or just basically aren't following the rules of the road. So understanding what the true capabilities of these devices are is a goal of ours today before you buy them. And again, talking about how we can play all of our parts in our different roles to ensure that our kids are safe on these devices should they be able to use them. So yeah, what we're going to talk about today is the rise in crashes. The devices are heavier and faster than your normal bikes, right? So the mistakes essentially have bigger consequences, and younger riders don't really truly understand the consequences of misusing them and the rules of the road, right? You have younger riders that are under the age of 16 who are out there on a road, but don't have their license or their permit yet, right? So they haven't gone through that driver education yet. And what we've found is the education component is something that we focus on primarily to prevent these types of incidences and injuries. So what you're going to see next, just so that before you see it, you have a little bit of an idea of what you're going to view. There are 3 incidents that all 3 of them occurred in Fairfield. They are crashes that involve juveniles on e-bikes or e-scooters. The first one you'll probably recognize from social media. The second 2 probably weren't public or really widely publicized, but we did stop them before the actual crash occurred, but it did occur. So I'll let Jenna play that real quick. So that's Post Road in front of like the Shell gas station. So that was on social media. This is on Post Road at Round Hill Road. You'll see the bicycle operator, the e-bike operator cross while the light is green. And the next one you're going to see was at a middle school in town.
And I'll just say no one was seriously hurt in any of these, so I'll preface it with that. But while you're watching these, just keep in mind, try to think to yourselves, what do you see that's wrong? What are they, besides the obvious? I mean, I think it's pretty clear.
It's done and you're on the slide with the different classes.
Okay. Yeah. So like all of you, I've been learning this as we go. I don't have an e-bike, never had an e-bike, they didn't exist. I was sad I missed out on Hot Wheels when I was a kid. So I'm catching up as all of you, and I think I was just on a LTA with people from all different towns. It's not unique to Fairfield. This isn't a Fairfield problem. These things have just exploded. I feel like just a few years ago we were dealing with bird scooters, and now we got these bikes that are going 40, 50, 60 miles an hour with kids that are 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, can't drive a car. So it's important that we define what an e-bike is. It's very easy to say it's a bike with an electric motor. But Connecticut follows the 3-class system. I don't know if anybody ever heard class 1, class 2, class 3. So in order for it to be considered an e-bike under the law in Connecticut, it has to fit one of these 3 classes. And if it does not, it's not an e-bike. Now what does that mean? If it's not an e-bike, does it fall on what rules, regulations does it fall on? Some of them are undefined. Your class 1 and 2 are pretty interchangeable. There are no age limits on either one of them. It's just a question of does the motor engage with pedaling or does it have a throttle? The 20 mile per hour, that's kind of misleading. That is the top speed that it can get with the motor. That doesn't mean it can't go faster. Your pedaling capability, the weight of the rider, terrain, all those things, it can go much faster than that. And that has no age restriction on it whatsoever. The class 3, the only difference is its top speed of 28. It's basically, it's a class 1, it is pedal, you have to be pedaling for the motor to engage, but it's 28. Now think about it, 28, and then now you're going downhill, or you got somebody that's pedaling faster, that has more bulk to them, you're going way over 28 miles an hour. If it falls out of these categories, it's no longer an e-bike. And again, some of it's undefined. So what if you have one of these bikes that, they all have to have pedals, right? What if it doesn't have pedals, but it doesn't reach a speed over 28? What is that defined as? And where does that fall into the law? I don't know. However, if it can go over 28 miles an hour, you now are required to have a driver's license. It's treated as a motor-driven cycle, which is like a moped. So that's one change that happened on October 1st. So we're making progress. Personally, if it was up to me, you would need a driver's license for every single one of these. Would I buy my child one of these? Would I let him ride it? Absolutely not. Those kids riding on the one on the Post Road were all about 12, 13 years old. Now, fortunately, they weren't going too fast, but you see the riding. Now, all these bikes, just like bicycles, are required to follow all the rules of the road, just like a car. And again, this gets to the predictability part about it, because when we're driving, where are we expecting vehicles to come from as we're coming out of a driveway or coming out of a roadway? We're expecting them to come from the left. Are they doing that? No. One thing to note in the town of Fairfield is we do not have an ordinance preventing riding on a sidewalk. Now, I understand the logic behind that. That is, they'd rather be on the sidewalk than on the road. Here's the problem with it, and this is something to consider. You have to ride with traffic when you're in the road. When you're on a sidewalk, you're considered a pedestrian and you can go either way, and it goes against the predictability. So we see a lot of crashes with that stuff happening. So follow all the rules of the road with some additions. All e-bikes are required, no matter how fast they're going, are required to run to the extreme right of the road unless you're overtaking a parked car or you're making a turn. You are required to signal your turn. You're also required to stop for stop signs. You're required to stop for red lights. Like I said, the class 3 requires you to be 16. Interesting note, you have to wear a helmet, even as an adult on an e-bike. Weird thing is in Connecticut on a motorcycle, you do not. But on an e-bike, you do. So that's defining what an e-bike is. And like I said, some of this is still undefined. The big change was if it's going over 28 miles an hour, it's now a motor-driven cycle, you need a license. So it's moving in the right direction. I gave you my opinion, I'm sure others have their own. That's where we're going. So I think it's incredibly important that you know what you're buying your children, you know what their capabilities are, you also know the maturity level of your children and what they're doing. Don't just assume that they're doing everything the right way, because clearly by the videos, like that one in particular, when I talked to the parent, they wanted to know what the car did wrong. Did you see the car do anything wrong? They wanted to know, they wanted the insurance until I showed them the video. Not my kid, right? So it's just very important to be aware of what these kids are riding. They're going faster, they weigh more. If you remember physics when you were in school, velocity, the extra weight, I mean, the impact, even like I'm sure the physicians and doctors will talk about the injuries they're seeing, like riding into a pedestrian. I mean, the bike just falls on them. So just some things to think.
The next slide you'll see is just some statistics, like Mike just said, as far as physics is concerned, right? So these devices are going faster at those speeds. As you increase speeds, rather, you're going to increase the likelihood of a serious injury or a death. So that's more for vehicles, but the same logic and physics apply to these bicycles now, or e-bikes. Mike touched on a lot of the next couple slides, so following the rules of the road, he touched on all of those. Really maintaining the bicycles is a huge thing too. Frequent inspections of them. The fire department will talk about batteries. But on top of that too, inspecting your child's device, because there's ways to modify these things. That class 1 can become a class 3 very easily when your kid watches a YouTube video and figures out how to follow those instructions. So it all comes down to what that top speed is and changing the regulations on it. I mentioned before, how we can all work together, parents having these discussions with your children, setting clear rules and expectations. The schools, they do their part on a daily basis with communicating with you what they're seeing and helping reinforce all these safety standards and logic that we're talking about today. And as far as the police department is concerned, education, enforcement when we have to, and partnering with all of you to really kind of identify the problems and solve them in the long run. So we look forward to your questions afterwards. I'm going to pass this on to the fire department now. Mike and Mike sharing a mic.
I don't need it anyway. Well, thank you all for coming. We do appreciate it. I just before I get going, I just wanted to thank the other panel members and Sarah and the mics and the doctors for showing up. But the real horsepower behind this has been Lisa. Lisa has made sure that this got done. And thank you very much for carrying the torch for all of us. So.
We will get you in a photograph.
We will. So we're talking about e-bikes, and why are we talking about them? We're talking about it because they're increasing in popularity. Well, how are e-bikes powered? That's the thing that's important to the fire department, because inside every bike there's a battery, there's a power device. It's a stored energy device, lithium-ion batteries in this particular case. The same thing that we're seeing in cars and things like that, but on a much smaller scale. We're going to talk about some of the fire risk and some of the incidents that can happen, specifically when you store these in your home, and an unsafe charging and storage practices to do with that. Is this the video now?
It is.
Okay. This is a video that was done by the Connecticut Fire Service.
Lithium-ion batteries have changed our lives. We use them every single day. From life-saving equipment that can restart your heart to extrication equipment that will cut you out of a car. Here's what you need to know. Choose wisely. Look for that UL label. The underwriter's label is going to tell you that that's been tested and it's a good product. Check the consumer reports before you get in there and you buy something.
You might think laptops might be safe, but you want to make sure you handle them properly. You don't want them to overheat on your bed, on your couch. Charge them till they're fully charged, and then unplug them and put them away.
Always stay alert. Whenever you're charging or after you've charged your bike, you always want to do a good inspection of the battery. You should look for any kind of defects, any swelling in the battery case, excessive heat, just anything that's not normal that you've seen before you started the process.
Recycle lithium-ion batteries in the proper fashion. You never throw them in the garbage. Take them to your transfer station. Make sure that you take them to a reputable recycling dealer. Even stop by your fire department, call your town to find out where they need to be recycled properly.
If you do have an emergency with your battery, you need to get out as soon as possible. Call 911. Make sure everybody's safe. Lithium-ion batteries, once they catch on fire, they are not easy to put out.
Educate yourself on what you have and what's around you, and the hazards that come with them and using those products.
Take this message and carry it on to your friends and family. This is an important message on behalf of the Connecticut Career Fire Chiefs and the Fairfield Fire Department.
All right, well, that was a video that was done not too long ago by the Connecticut Fire Chiefs. We were a big part of it. It's something that we wanted to educate the public on. If you go on our website, you'll see that video is there if you needed to show it to anybody. But what we actually see, these fires are a little different than ordinary combustibles. They're faster, they're hotter. You saw the explosivity of it. It's floor to ceiling very, very fast. And the chemicals that are coming off these batteries are much different than normal organic fires. And those are the issues that we have, that you cannot breathe in that smoke. It's hydrofluoric, HF, what we call it, and it'll burn your lungs out. And that's just get away from them, stay away from them. They can reignite, they're self-sustaining. Those are some of the issues that we have. A lot of times it starts at the charging when you're connecting or disconnecting. You'll see that one video they showed, there's a definitive pop, and then it just takes off from there. And the damage is just, it's very, very quick. So how they fail, damage or defects. So these are on bicycles. Sometimes people crash on bicycles. Sometimes we drop our batteries, things like that. Once they're damaged and the cells internally can be damaged, you can have a chain reaction. That's why we see, like, when there's a car that has this, it's self-sustaining. It's very, very difficult for us to put out. It's an internal short. There's a Connecticut transit bus that actually caught on fire that had a damaged battery in it. It burnt the bus up before it was ever even used. So they're very, very serious. We take it very, very serious. The venting and the ignition on them, and it's what's called a chain reaction, a thermal runaway. And you'll see it, search it on YouTube, you'll see all these videos of these batteries it's incredibly fast. So what can we do? Excuse me, I'm trying to follow along my slides here. Why are these fires increasing? Well, how do we get everything nowadays? Nobody goes to the store and buys it. We just get it off Amazon. The person that you're buying it from on Amazon, are they a trusted seller? Are they reconditioning these batteries and selling them to you at a cheaper? Sometimes if it's too good to be true, it might actually be too good to be true. A lot of fires that we're seeing out of New York City in these apartment buildings are people reconditioning batteries in their apartment buildings. So counterfeits, rebuilds, and things like that. These are important things to look at. Look for that UL certification. How can families reduce risk? Charge them safely, proper charger, no overnight charging, no flammable surfaces. Best if you can get them away from the house. Store them safely, not near flammables. Don't put it in the shed. Inspect it after your crash. Make sure there's no damage. Proper maintenance to your bicycle. Make sure that you have everything that needs to be. Bring it in for a tune-up. Have the professionals look at it. Buy safe equipment. Talk to your kids about riding about rules and helmets. I'm very thankful that I didn't have this bike when I was a kid, because I would probably figure out how to unlock and go as fast as I could too. You guys got to be careful. Trust me, they go that fast. So how can we reduce it? Don't place them in trash or recycling bins. They're fire hazards, and if you throw it in the back of a fire or a garbage truck and it gets crushed when they hit the crusher, it could damage that and it could start a fire in the back of a garbage truck. Now you're taking that truck, you've done damage to that. Bring all the batteries and electronics to a recycling trailer at the Fairfield train station. It's free for residents with a valid sticker. The staff at the scale house should direct you. I think there's a map. Is that in there? Okay, there is a map that we can, it's on the town website, I believe. If a fire starts, get everyone out immediately. Don't try to pick it up, you'll burn your hands. Don't try to save the bike or whatever the device is. Close all the doors if you can. You will stop the spread of fire if you can contain the fire to either it's in a garage or something to that effect. Close as many doors as you can on the way out. Call 911 from outside. If you don't have your cell phone, call from a neighbor's house. It's just a house. We can't replace you. We can replace a house. Do not re-enter the building. Batteries can explode and reignite. Meet us outside. Tell us where what happened, where it was, and what happened. And if we're here for a resource for you. Like I said, that video is on our website. You can call. We'll talk to you, whatever you need. You can talk about safe setups in your home or garage. Our fire prevention division is very well versed in that. And together we can ensure that the kids are riding safely and our families are out of harm's way.
I think this is me now, emergency room insight. So I'm Dr. Latham, so I'm an emergency medicine physician. I work at Bridgeport Hospital. I've been there for about 11 years. Also medical director, one of the medical directors for EMS in the greater Bridgeport area. That includes here. And I actually live in Fairfield myself, and I have two boys. One's 11, one's 13, and we do not own an e-bike or e-scooter. I don't plan to. They definitely concern me. So the big questions that people kind of want to know, right, is how dangerous are these things? And there's kind of two components to answering that question. There's how frequently do accidents occur, and when an accident occurs, how bad is it? So how frequently and how bad is it? The frequency thing is kind of interesting. If you look through the studies, most of the time, e-bikes and e-scooters get compared to bikes. Well, issue there is bikes are actually kind of dangerous in and of itself, right? The most common, if you consider cycling a sport, it's actually the #1 most frequent cause of C-spine injuries, neck injuries. And it's I think, top 5 cause of concussions. So, I mean, cycling's not benign. That being said, I think we look at it like, okay, this is this great thing. It's exercise, kind of a rite of passage for the kids. But just understand, as we compare e-bikes and e-scooters to cycling, we're already kind of starting out with something that's a little bit dangerous. And a lot of bad accidents occur just with regular bikes. Looking at the numbers, kind of the way they do this is basically they say, so if a person were to ride on a bike for 1 million miles, how frequently would they have an injury that would put them in the emergency department? So start with cars. So basically the number for car is somewhere between 1 and 2, meaning for every 1 million miles that cars are driven, there's 1 to 2 accidents that results in somebody needing to come to my emergency department and get taken care of. It kind of makes sense, right? Like, knock on wood, I've been driving my whole life, haven't needed to be in the emergency department yet, and probably put at least 500,000 to 700,000 miles on my cars. So that's that 1 to 2. So what is it for bikes? Well, that number jumps up quite a lot. It goes up to like 20 to 25, maybe even 30. So now you're 20 to 30 times more likely to be in the emergency department for every mile that you're riding on a bike compared to being in a car. Does that make sense, kind of? So then what if we go to e-bikes? E-bikes is about 57% more likely than the bikes. So now that number's jumped to around 40. And then e-scooters is really interesting because that number could be anywhere from similar to bikes and e-bikes to all the way up to like 200 to 300. And that really just kind of depends on how experienced a person is. You put me on an e-scooter and try to send me back to my house on Old Post Road, I will get in an accident. There's no way I make it home. And that's the problem. A lot of people jump on these things with zero training and experience. Now, if you're riding these things every day as your preferred means of transportation, then your risk maybe starts to get close to like the people on bikes and e-bikes. But if you're jumping on these things and you don't ride them all the time and you don't know what you're doing, you have an extremely high rate of ending up in the emergency department for an injury. So now let's move on to the force and the mechanism. And then we'll kind of talk about the injury pattern. That's okay. So the mechanism's pretty clear, right? You're driving, bike stops, e-scooter stops, you have inertia, you keep going, right? You keep going until you hit something hard that makes you stop. So roughly how much force is that? Well, we talked about how fast these things go. You know, they can go 30 miles per hour pretty easily. So that's roughly, so when your face hits a tree going 30 miles per hour, that's roughly equivalent to getting punched by Mike Tyson during his prime. So if you want a kind of vivid imagery, right? I would not want to take a punch from Mike Tyson now, let alone in his prime. And if you picture that, it's pretty easy to imagine what happens to the face and the head when it absorbs that amount of force. Put a bike helmet on, that's nice. I still don't want to get punched by Mike Tyson in the head or face, let alone my kids. So that's kind of what you're talking about with force. So just remember that. You get to that 30 mile per hour, that's kind of what you're dealing with. Scary stuff. So the injury pattern, really for all three things, it's kind of similar. So regular bikes, e-bikes, e-scooters, for the most part, kind of similar injury pattern with some differences one way or the other. By far, in all three of those, the most common injuries, anyone guess? Yeah, everything above here. Well, not the collarbone we'll get to, but basically injury pattern, head, neck, face. Head, neck, face. And those are serious, right? I mean, head injuries, we're realizing more and more. That's a problem. We grade them from sort of a mild traumatic brain injury to moderate and severe. Basically, that's your standard concussion would fall into that mild traumatic brain injury. Even more kind of severe concussions would. Even those can have lasting effects for years, sometimes even a lifetime. So concussions are no joke. I know we kind of brush it off because you hear about them so much. They're really serious. Then if you get into moderate and severe traumatic brain injury, moderate doesn't sound too bad, moderate's really bad. Like, I do not ever want to have a moderate traumatic brain injury. You might never recover fully from that. You may or may not have a head bleed with a moderate or a severe traumatic brain injury, but basically what you're talking about is someone who's had a pretty prolonged loss of consciousness, and by the time they come to see me in the emergency department, their GCS, which is a score we calculate based on how well you can open your eyes, how well you can speak, how well you can move, is really low. And those individuals don't do well. And then the severe traumatic brain injuries, they really don't do well. So in terms of areas affected, again, probably 30% of injuries, head, face, neck. The head ones are just awful. Facial fractures, facial lacerations, nobody wants them. Nobody wants their teeth all knocked out, but you can recover from that. But the head injuries, those you might never recover from. So number one most common, head, face, neck. After that, second most common, you kind of mentioned it, upper extremity. So if you're lucky, you get your hands out, right? And absorb the force into your hands. Hey, I'd take that over my head and face any day. And as you can imagine, basically a lot of force, broken collarbones, broken arms, dislocated joints, sometimes open fractures, things like that. But so that's certainly second most common. Third most common, lower extremity fractures, and then a small portion of people, percentage of people have injuries to their chest, belly, internal bleeding, things like that. Not super common, but we see them. If you kind of compare those three different things, bikes, e-bikes, and scooters, you know, scooters, for whatever reason, we definitely see a much higher percentage of facial injuries, you know, broken teeth, facial fractures, bad lacks, things like that, compared to the other two. Regular bikes, that one, we tend to see the highest number of like upper extremity injuries. I guess people just get their hands out time. They travel a little slower, so you have a little more time to respond. And then definitely the traumatic brain injury, that thing that I mentioned multiple times, we definitely see that with the e-bikes and e-scooters compared to bikes, a higher amount of moderate to severe traumatic brain injuries. We also see higher numbers of internal bleeding and pelvic fractures. Like I said, overall injury patterns the same, and if you're going, you know, the speed of a street bike, it's probably almost identical for all of those things. But that faster speed results in some pretty nasty injuries. Just close by sharing like a little vignette of a case that I had at Bridgeport Hospital. So I was working one day, and we got a call that they were bringing in 3 kids who had an e-bike, an e-scooter accident. They were all 3 of them on the scooter together. You know, we see this all the time. And they ran into a parked car, and they all flew off. They weren't helmeted. One of them, all 3 of them were brought in technically alive, but the first person, the person up front, she died the next day. She was 11, and yeah, she had a lot of bad head bleeds. She had herniation of her brain, a lot of brain swelling. Her face was almost unrecognizable. So she died the next day. The second one had knocked out all her teeth, had a lot of facial fractures, some pretty bad facial lacerations, some broken bones, open fracture, but survived. But I would have to imagine that she'd probably have some lasting damage. And the third one actually had just minor scrapes, you know, so, you know, it's a real roll of the dice. So, you know, that's, you know, kind of the worst one that I've seen, and I don't want to see any more. So, we do questions at the end? Yeah, okay.
Thank you. My name is Jackie. I'm one of the trauma PAs at St. Vincent's Medical Center. I've been working there for about 3.5 years now. Dr. Latham touched on many of the injuries that we see as well. Little caveat for our hospital system is we are not a pediatric facility, but we do get pediatric patients. If we're the closest facility and that patient needs the emergency room, they're coming to us. And we stabilize them in order to be able to transfer them to a longer care facility where they're a little bit more equipped to deal with pediatric patients. We have seen a rise in the injuries that get brought to us with the e-bikes and e-scooters. A lot of the injury patterns that Dr. Latham had talked about, you know, it's a lot of the broken bones, head, neck, face trauma. He was touching about the internal trauma. That's where we start to see when, as you saw in the video, as people are riding on the road, they're concerned about how they're riding and they're using their bike, and maybe they're doing it in you know, a safe way. Maybe they're not, but there is also cars which are extremely heavy machinery that can also hit into you on a bike, or you can hit into that bike. And we talked a little bit about force, and that's where we see a little bit more of these really devastating injuries for patients, and would have a pretty significant lasting effect into whether it's pelvic trauma, could have some long-standing effects with growth and with the way you're able to walk and move about. If you have some internal bleeding, that can require a trip to the operating room and having to go get something surgically repaired with a member of our team. And the most severe would ultimately be death from one of these types of injuries. So how can we kind of best prevent ourselves from ending up in the emergency room and seeing one of us? We talked about it, you have to wear helmets with the e-bikes. It's not always common that people follow this rule, but it's a great way to start, to be able to save your head from a potential injury there, making sure you're abiding by the rules of the road, which is challenging when a lot of the people that are starting to ride these e-bikes are, younger population that they haven't gone through a driver's ed class, or they haven't really been able to know what the rules of the road are yet. So just making sure, if this is something that's coming into your household, you're having those conversations to make sure that your kids are following the rules of the road to be able to do everything as safe as possible. I think in general for us, when we're seeing these patients that come in, we're going to stabilize and treat everything that we can. We want to do it in as quick of a manner as possible, and be able to get them to their long-standing facility. I think you did touch on a lot of the injuries, so if you guys have questions, we can probably give you a little bit more information on that end of things, but helmets have to be a must, especially even if you're just riding around your neighborhood, following rules of the road and making sure that you're very well aware of how your bike works and how to kind of maneuver around situations.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mason, the chair of the Bike Ped Committee. We're going to shift gears just a little bit to tell you kind of what things the town is doing to kind of, so to back up, the committee's goal really is to increase walkability and bikeability in town. And to do this, the committee tries to listen to neighbors about issues they're experiencing in neighborhoods, and we hear a lot about e-bikes as a problem and kids not being respectful of residents who are walking on sidewalks and things like that. And so really one of the goals of the committee is to try and find a space for everybody. To do this in part, we also help the town look for grant funding. So in earlier this year, we were awarded a $350,000 federal Safe Streets for All grant. And so that's gonna allow the town to kind of create a safety action plan. And as we create that, we'll be looking at crash data and also getting resident feedback. And so we really want to be engaging the community on where they see issues and what they see the issues are. The goal of that plan really is to kind of prioritize areas in Fairfield that should be improved to increase safety for all users. So that's drivers, it's cyclists, and pedestrians. And so one of the things that we can do to make cycling safer for everybody is, protected bike lanes, for example, so that there's a place for cyclists to be that is separate from where cars are. That's all kind of under a broader initiative, Vision Zero initiative, which is the global road safety initiative to eliminate traffic deaths and serious injuries. And really the biggest component of that is that human error is inevitable, right? We all make mistakes. We do them when we're driving, we do them when we're biking, we do them when we're walking. But traffic fatalities and serious injuries are preventable through better designed road infrastructure that minimizes the impact of those mistakes. So we know that speed increases the severity of crashes and increases the likelihood of death and serious injuries. There's a road safety concept called the 3 E's. It's enforcement, education, and engineering. All of them are important. Enforcement is what you expect, police presence to enforce the law. So drivers driving the speed limit, stopping at stop signs. Our police do an excellent job, but there's 271 miles of roadways in town. So obviously, we can't have a police officer on every road or at every intersection all the time. Engineering is really the most effective, but it also is expensive and takes the longest. So regardless of limit signs, for example, drivers will drive at whatever speed is comfortable for them in the car. So if you're on a 25-mile-an-hour road and you find yourself doing 35 or 40, that's because the road is allowing you to feel comfortable doing that in your car. So roads that have wide lanes or large shoulders will give you that kind of confidence that you can go faster than the posted speed limit. And this applies to many roads in town. So the way to fix that is to change the road design so you feel less comfortable driving fast. So that means narrow roads. And so yes, it might mean it takes you a few seconds longer to get from point A to point B, but it's safer for you in the car and for those of us that might be outside the car. Education is the last E, and that's partly why we're here today. So the Fairfield Safe Streets Alliance was kind of created to do a public education campaign in town for these issues, because we need to make sure that all road users know what's required of them, whether you're in the car or out of the car. And we all have responsibility. So we talked about this a lot, but if you're going to be riding your bike, whether it be a pedal bike or an electric bike, you need to know the rules of the road. You need to wear a helmet, because like we talked about speed, the faster you're going, the worse the injuries are likely gonna be. And then the last thing I would want to touch on today is another big component is kind of creating support for a lot of these initiatives in town. So a lot of road infrastructure changes are going to feel a little weird at first, I think, and there's sometimes resistance to some of them. But I would just encourage everybody to kind of keep an open mind and help. The more community support we can have for these things, the safer it will be for everybody.
Charlie, we got you next, I think. So, Charlie Gander from Psychodynamics.
I live in Fairfield, but I've been in America since 1990. So this is an e-bike. We are selling more and more e-bikes, but we're very cautious about one we even let into a store. Certain e-bikes people have bought online and they bring it in because they can't get the brakes to work. 3.5 hours later, the brakes are less worse. The customer gets a $300 bill for our labor. We're not happy. Nobody's happy. So always make sure you buy a bicycle from a reputable store, bike shop, and make sure it's assembled correctly. We have to use torque wrenches. This bicycle has what they call hydraulic brakes, which are very similar to a car and a motorcycle. So the brakes have to be a lot stronger because this bike weighs around 45 pounds. We have a lot of people who buy bikes from Amazon and they have normal bicycle brakes, which are just not going to stop. And this bicycle will max out at 28 miles an hour. So one of the companies we sell always says it's you but better. It's a bicycle with the ability to allow you to ride further and faster with the motor, but it's not a motorcycle. A lot of e-bikes we won't even allow in our store. Legally wise or insurance wise, my insurance company is extremely strict on it. It says you start bringing in e-bikes that people have built themselves, your insurance will quadruple or will just drop as a client. So we're very cautious about what we work on. And we also had a kid today who bought a motor online and he wanted to add it to his bike. And we said no. And he said, well, if I put it on, can you guys adjust it for me? We said no. So as long as you buy a company that is a known brand, Trek, Specialized, Cannondale, that make sure it is obviously serviced correctly. We also had another person who bought a bike from me and he called me up and he said, I'm loving riding it and I want to chip it, which basically means I want to make it faster. And we said, nah, so we're not going to do that. And then he goes, one other thing is, my brakes started squeaking. So my friend who knows a lot about bikes sprayed some oil on the rotors. And I said, well, so the squeak went away? He goes, yeah. He goes, the brakes totally disappeared? He went, yeah. So I now pay a lot of money for my mechanics to be trained on bicycles. And one of my good friends used to work in a bike shop. He was in high school. And he said, I could build a bike. I said, you couldn't build a bike now. You have to plug, this bicycle here, we have to plug into a computer to update the firmware on the batteries and the software and all this other stuff. So there is an awful lot more involved in discussing helmets, bicycle helmets. We all survived our life without helmets because we never did anything stupid when we were kids. This is a bicycle helmet. This is only rated for 13 to 14 miles an hour. So if you buy an e-bike, which can go to 20 or 28 miles an hour, it's not going to be strong enough. So this is an e-bike helmet, stronger. It has to pass a certain higher standard. And so basically, if your kids buy e-bikes, they have to have e-bike helmets because a normal helmet, although it's better than nothing, isn't going to last. And helmets only last 1 to 3 years. This is a cracked helmet, and as we say, it can crack 3 ways, because you ride into a tree at 30 miles an hour, which I've actually done a couple of times, and not recommended to it. You can ride it because you leave it on the roof of your car and you drop it and it hits the ground, or you repeatedly throw it at people and drop it. So eventually they end up cracking. And we just say grab it, flex it, and always replace your helmet every 2 to 3 years. That's it.
Sorry. I just wanted to say we are fortunate enough to actually have Charlie maintain our bicycles at the police department. So wealth of information will be here if you guys have questions, even after the questions. So thank you for being here, Charlie.
And on that, I'm saying we're required to go to training before we can ride them. So something that not everyone else is required to do.
And someone did break a collarbone.
Thank you so much, all of you. That was really informative. I hope everybody enjoyed it. At this point, we wanted to open it up to questions from the audience. Oh, okay.
So if you guys think of questions, please continue to write them down and pass them over if you can. I'll start reading some of the ones people asked during the presentation. For one of the doctors or medical professionals, how much force does it take to break a bone? And also, the next question is going to be, what is the worst injury you've seen? Relating to bikes, of course. Let's keep it within that realm. Though I think you already covered yours.
So it's kind of dependent on the force that it takes to break a bone. In someone who's otherwise young and healthy and kind of fully developed, it does take a significant amount of force. But it's also depending on what exactly you're hitting, how fast you were going when you were hitting said object, or if it was just at like maybe a very awkward angle that you hit a particular bone. It also depends, exactly which bone you're talking about. We have like our upper leg bone, the femur, is one of the strongest bones in the body, but if you're talking about a finger, it's much easier to break one of the bones in your finger. So it's kind of a wide range for that. In terms of one of the worst injuries that I've seen pertaining to a bike, we had it was an adult, but pretty substantial pelvic trauma, which is, the bones all in your hips, and it was completely separated apart, and you have some pretty major vessels that run down your legs, and if those get nicked, it can lead to some pretty swift bleeding, and having a patient almost bleed out in front of you before you're able to get them to whatever intervention, and that was a situation that we had. The pelvis was fully cracked open, and it nicked one of the arteries that runs down the leg, and we had to get them to our interventional radiology suite pretty quickly to get that.
What was the accident?
It was I think it was, I'm not sure e-bike or e-scooter, but a car had T-boned them right into the side of the pelvis, so cracked their pelvis open, and it's a pretty substantial injury. So
One of the things to remember too in our crash reconstructionists can explain this as well is if you're on an e-bike and you hit a tree, you're doing 30 miles an hour, that's a 30-mile-an-hour crash. If you hit a car that's coming the other way that's doing 30 miles an hour, that is a 60-mile-an-hour crash. They're in a car. They're going to survive. You are not. That's the thing about it.
One of the next questions we have is how fast should people that ride bikes go? Anybody?
I would say as fast as they're capable of, but I think a lot of people riding e-bikes are just not capable of the speeds that the bike is capable of. So that's what we talk about. This bike here, it's a class 3, so it's pedal assisted. The motor only engages when the pedal's going, and the motor stops at 28. That doesn't mean the bike can't go faster than 28. And again, there's all different kinds of ways, like little magnets, different things. Just do a YouTube search, and you'll see. And I've had crashes. We had one kid into a telephone pole. Now, concussed, will be okay, but I asked him how fast can this bike go? 40, 50 miles an hour. So he admitted to me, there's no repercussions to it. There's no law against modifying a bike, so he had no problem having the conversation. Made it clear, like, you're not going to get in trouble. I was just on my own curiosity. But just know the capabilities of what you're buying for your kids.
Can I just add to that? It might be a good idea as a parent to get on an e-bike and see what it feels like. As an adult, your brain is fully developed, so you can theoretically make better decisions than a not fully developed brain. My sister-in-law, they have one car and they use an e-bike for transportation and it works for them. They have a class 1 probably, it goes 20 miles an hour. She can put her kids on it. They take it to and from school. They take it for errands. But she knows what it feels like to be on that and what's comfortable. And, not all of us will feel comfortable driving on a bike that can go 28. So just something to consider.
I was going to qualify what Mike said is the bike might be capable of going 28 miles an hour. It doesn't mean it's safe to do that. So as fast as you could safely ride the bike is what I would say the answer is. Even in a car, right? If it's dark out or it's raining out, speed limit might be 35, but it might only be safe to go about 25. From a statute standpoint in a vehicle, we have a statute that's called driving unsafe for conditions. It's kind of a similar concept, right? Even though the speed limit allows you, or the capability of the bike allows you to go a certain speed, still might not be safe to do so.
Yeah, these bikes, I don't mean to speak completely bad about them. They're a great alternative mode of transportation. I'm talking about 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds riding.
So we got a few of the same question. Where can kids go to learn how to ride bikes, specifically these? Is there some sort of program? Is there anything that you recommend children to take?
So I was actually just in a meeting, was it yesterday or the day before, with all the middle school principals in town, and one of the things that we were talking about was a partnership between the schools and the police department, because kids are in middle school are driving them to school. Some middle schools more than others. And what can we do to make sure that they're arriving and leaving school safely? And one of the concepts that was thrown out there was perhaps some sort of program that we as a police department or with our community partners could put together to not necessarily teach someone how to ride a bike, but how to teach someone to operate these things safely. What concepts you should keep in mind, getting them to learn the different parts and functionality of these bicycles, and then maybe even making that something that's I'm not sure if this got to you yet. Something that's a little bit of maybe a requirement before being able to actually drive that bike to school. So things like that, to answer that question, are things that we're thinking about right now, because there really isn't anything out there at this point in time. But it's something that events like this, conversations that we're all involved in, are helping us realize is a need or a gap that we have in town, or really throughout the probably country, and something we're working to make sure we fill.
For the fire chief, is
Well, is there a law? Are there laws that concern the bikes, kids, and what they're supposed to do? you know, I see plenty of adults who don't follow it.
The answer to that is yes. The question with a lot of this unsafe riding that we're seeing is the consequences is a citation from an adult. You can't cite somebody under 16 years old. They fall in their bicycle statutes. It's Title 14. But the problem that we run into, and we've had these discussions as a community, is the only option we have for somebody under 16 is a juvenile referral to court, or I always want to say JRB, I know it's not called that anymore, youth diversion. So now that's something we want to do with young kids, and we decided that at least for now, while we reserve the right to take enforcement action, that we are choosing educational and trying to really get to our first line of defense, which is the parents.
And in your brochures that you all have on your seats, and if you need any, we have a big box of them, is this slide. It has all of the bike-related laws that can be enforced in Connecticut.
So when you're learning to drive a car, you take driver's ed, you do this and that. But now you're saying that to learn to drive an e-bike, that's the responsibility of the police department?
No, it's responsibility of the parents. What we're saying is that as a police department, as a town, we have a responsibility to understand the gaps that we have in resources for adults, for any member of our community, right? And if there's something we can do to fill that gap, we believe it's our responsibility as a municipality to do that, and whatever roles that we all have, we'll gladly take part in it. So if there's something we can do to provide a resource to ensure that the youth in our town, or even the adults in our town, are operating devices like these, or whatever the topic is, safely, we want to be able to see if that's something that we can do. But there is no requirement of that, at least at the state level right now, as there is for getting your permit for a vehicle.
But Mike, I think you said before, the police department has a course that you guys take.
That's correct.
I wouldn't recommend that.
The issue really is the technology has outpaced the law. So the technology came first, and the law is trying to catch up. So that's why we're here tonight, because there's this gap.
And one of the worst things I think we all see, we're driving along, all of a sudden the kid goes like this. I mean,
yep.
Post Road, Fairfield, I'm not doing more than 15, I don't care what the speed is, because people, and the kids, all of a sudden, everywhere I go, they cut, you're like, whoa, so you're watching because they do, not all kids.
So,
okay? Not all kids.
It is twofold, right? We have, if you're talking about at fault, right there, and we were talking actually predictability before, right? So where do you expect, like Mike said, when you're making a turn, operating a vehicle, where do you expect someone to come from? And you're looking, it's mostly to your left, right? The unpredictability of anybody on an e-bike or a bicycle, if they're not following the rules of the road, contributes to that. On top of that, we also do have a number of motor vehicle drivers in this town who do not follow the laws as well. So that is a contributing factor in many cases too. With regard to e-bikes related to youth, it is generally a factor more so with not following the rules of the road.
So for the next question is going to be for Chief Berry. Where is it safe to charge an e-bike or scooter?
So it's safe to charge it where you can see it, meaning like if it's during the day, try and do it outside of your house or in your garage away from you, but don't charge it overnight. Make sure it's the proper charger. Make sure that it's not loose connections, things like that. You can charge it inside your garage. Make sure your doors are shut and make sure you're paying attention to it. It's not a set it, forget it type thing. Keep an eye on it. We had an incident 6-7 months ago where the woman was in her house charging her, it wasn't an e-bike, it was a tennis ball server. She heard it pop, opened the door to the garage, saw that it was on fire. Fortunately, her children had just gone through our 3rd grade education program, taught her to close the door. She closed the door to her house and the fire was contained in her garage. So it's things like that we talk about, and this is the first step of what we're talking about. The whole education thing is you guys coming here and learning. You guys bringing your children. Thank you for bringing them so you guys understand. And thank you guys for coming and paying attention. But it's not, nothing that we do is ever set it and forget it. When you plug it in, you plug it into the wall, pay attention to it. You know how long these things charge, don't let them cook out there.
As a follow-up question for the chief, is it okay to charge a Toyota Prius overnight, this is specific, targeting someone's mom or dad, if the car is outside the house and the outlet is in the garage.
But the charger is outside of the house?
If the car is outside the house and the outlet is in the garage.
I'm assuming that it's a 110 outlet, so it plugs in and then it would go out to the car itself has a level 1 charger on board. Just make sure the car is not directly next to the house. Give it a little bit of a distance, so if there was a problem with the car, that if it caught on fire, it wouldn't catch the house on fire as quick. And we call 911 if we do notice that it's on fire. So the fire blankets are a very interesting thing. The fire blankets do not stop the reaction. They only help us contain the reaction. Once you take that blanket off, that reaction is going to continue to happen. There's actually a video that just came out a few weeks ago where they introduced oxygen, and once that air gets underneath it actually popped and blew the whole blanket off. We're very, very careful about using those blankets. We wouldn't use that out in an open area. That would be, for example, if you had a garage attached to your house or under your house, we may throw that blanket over there until we get proper precautions in place. So we have hose lines in place to handle that fire and pull that vehicle. We'll probably pull the vehicle right out of the house is the easiest way.
While we're still on batteries, how significant of a crash or a fall of a bike do you need to replace the battery?
Depends on the battery, depends on the construction of the battery, depends on what you hit. The first thing you would do if you had a battery that was involved in a crash is inspect it physically. Put your hands on it. Does it feel like it's swollen? Do you feel anything like that? If it feels okay, plug it in outside of your house. That one I wouldn't do inside your house at all. Give it 10-15 minutes. Go out and look at the battery. Does the battery look like it's swelling? Is it smoking? Does it stink? Anything like that. If anything like that's happened, unplug it, move it further away from your house, and dispose of it. After it cools down, we can dispose of it properly.
Moving on to some rule questions from some of the kids here. What if there's no place to ride your bike like a sidewalk? Where are they supposed to go?
To the right side of the road with traffic. So as far to the right, just like a car, same direction a car is going, as far to the right. And if you have to move over to go around, make sure you look behind you, that there's nothing there. And if you're gonna make a left turn, make sure you're using the proper hand signals for turning. It's hand signals, just like a regular bicycle.
Yeah. You remember?
So one thing that we talked about as well is like your attire. So whether it's an e-bike, an e-scooter, a bicycle, whether you're walking on the road, if it's at night, make sure you're wearing something bright. If you have something reflective, the helmet's a big thing that we see, as we mentioned numerous times with kids, not just on your head, but actually the whole, and the right type of helmet. The second video you guys saw, the one where he came out of Round Hill Road, he took his helmet out of the house with him, but left it at home. So mom and dad thought he had it, but he didn't. So fortunately, he just missed the curb with his head on that accident.
So I don't know if this is a good question for you guys or if there's anybody who might be able to answer. Are there any plans to adapt town or state stricter laws like surrounding communities? Examples given are Suffolk County, New Jersey, etc. I don't know if anybody in the room can answer that.
Kristen? Put you on the spot.
Well, thank you. We are very lucky here to have the Safe Streets Alliance, to have our bike ped committee, and to have Complete Streets and Vision Zero. And so what I would say as a transportation committee member, along with Senator Wong and working with First Selectman Vitale, if there are things that our leaders here who are seeing this on the ground think we need to address, then yes, we can. Procedurally, this is the short session of the legislative year, and Representative Sarah Pitt is here also, who has her master's in public health, though she's not on transportation. She understands this, but we can't, as individual legislators, put bills in this year, so it would probably, this year meaning for 2026. So most likely we would have to propose for 2027 or talk with the committee chairs. And what I can tell you is that because we made the changes last year that we did, even though it feels like we're behind, yes, we move a little bit slower. So it's unlikely that we're gonna have any major changes to the laws in 2026. But in legislation, everything changes all the time, so no guarantees on that.
And then a question for the panel. If you had an ordinance in Fairfield written, what would, it says the top 5 issues you choose to be included, but do as many as you feel comfortable there.
Limiting it just to e-bikes? No, I'm just kidding. You might want to answer this more. Mike's more.
Well, yeah, this is it's for e-bikes, e-scooters, those kinds of things.
One thing we mentioned was sidewalks, but I think you also have to be careful if that's going to be an ordinance that we look at, because if the road isn't designed to support, the separation, like Sarah mentioned, of the bike and the pedestrians, the bicycles, the cars, that might actually be creating more of a dangerous situation. So a blanket, hey, you can't ride on the sidewalk on a bike or an e-bike, might actually create more problems than it is going to solve. But there's also benefits to it as well. So I don't know off the top of my head like what ordinances we could pass. I think these discussions are what answers those questions. And having more of these will allow us to be able to, we're just open conversations with your RTM members, your legislators, town leaders, will be able to allow us to actually understand what those needs are.
I would say something along the lines of looking into whether the police, if they see certain reckless behavior, can seize that bike and require a parent to come and retrieve the bike. Because we can't, like I said before, ticket the juvenile. We really prefer not to send them to court. But if we have some sort of mechanism in there where it requires a parent to come down to retrieve the bike and maybe pay some sort of penalty, I mean, I think that's something we could look into. Correct.
I think another one that's kind of been discussed would be finding a way, I think the police can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you willingly lend your unregistered car to somebody, the police can, and that person gets pulled over for doing something, they can ticket the person who lent the car. So kind of a similar thing, like a way to kind of ticket the parent, which some of you might not like, but but it's kind of a way to do that. That's one. And then to talk about the sidewalk ordinance for a second, because as pet chair, and also as a parent of, I have 3 kids, they're 9, 7, and 4, and we ride our regular bikes on the sidewalk all the time because it does not feel safe to be in the road with young children. It's just something to kind of consider when we're talking about banning bicycles from sidewalks. And I know a lot of parents feel similarly, so until we have roads that feel comfortable to be biking on with children, it's something to remember. That's it.
I think before even you would regulate anything, it starts inside the house. It starts with your parenting. It starts with kids listening. And if your parents, an ordinance is only going to have effect if they're there to see it. You have to think about it ahead of time and be responsible of the people that you're passing by, the people you're coming upon. You don't want to drive into somebody, slowing down a little bit. It starts there. It starts with just having responsibility while you're riding it and understanding the damage that you could cause if you hit somebody or if you crash. The rippling effects of having a crash, hitting a telephone pole at 30 miles an hour. That doesn't stop then. That goes on for years. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're on these things, going is, trying to go as fast as you can. There could be an effect if you do. Same within your car. You're speeding down the highway at 80 miles an hour and you crash. That's a lot different than if you're doing 20 miles an hour on a side street. So everything has a cause and effect. But I think it all starts with the families, talking about it and having an open conversation of, this can be dangerous if you use it that way. If you don't use it that way, it won't be as dangerous.
Just before you do any more, is there, maybe just to kind of get more of a dynamic conversation going, are there questions that you guys have, you want to kind of have a back and forth about?
This is the last question, and I was going to do that. Oh. Sorry, Lieutenant, I didn't mean to overstep. The last question before that, why don't we have bike lanes in our streets or blocks?
We don't. We don't have them, and we would love to have. There's a lot of members in the community who would love to have them. A protected bike lane, just so everybody knows, that's a barrier. That's a bike lane that has a barrier between the cars and the bike lane. To install one of those, you have to give up your street parking, and that's been a stickler for a lot of people in the community. I personally live off of Mill Plain Road, and my kids and I walk and bike to Riverfield School. They'll walk and bike to Ludlow and middle and high school as well. I would love to have a protected bike lane on Mill Plain. It's a bicycle route that's used by a lot of people in the community, and there's been resistance to that because of parking. And you know, it's a touchy issue, but really residents don't own the street. That's a public right of way. But you know, people want to be able to put their cars there when they have a party. So it's a balance, right? And so there's probably some streets in the community where we could give that up for the better of the whole town. Not every street would be a candidate for something like that, but that is something that the Bike Ped Committee would love to see. Well, and that's been proposed, and there, you know, I don't need to go into too much detail, but that is something that has been kind of proposed and discussed. And you know, we're limited in some capacities because our roads are only so wide, and there's requirements on how big the bike lanes are supposed to be, and you know, where do they connect and what do they connect to. So it's not super straightforward. It's kind of nuanced. But if people would support that, we would love to hear it, especially in the next few weeks when we kick off this Safe Streets for All grant, and there will be, I think, about 10 public meetings with neighborhoods, communities for people to come out and say they support that, so that when, you know, projects are designed and then built, we have the support from the community would be excellent.
With regard to the bike lanes, there's like 3 things that you'll see. Like Sarah mentioned, the protected bike lane is one option, right? You might, what someone might have referred to, you might see the hash marks in the road that have like the bicycle symbol. That's just essentially signaling to you as a driver that you have the responsibility to share the road with bicycles. And it's kind of like
Share-o.
Exactly, Share-o, that's what it is. And then you also have like on Old Post Road or Old Field Road over here, the buffer zones, which cars can park in, but if they're not parked in, or if there's no cars parked there, it allows a buffer, almost like the protected bike lane, but it's not a dedicated protected bike lane. So there's kind of 3 different options, and it really depends on the road design, the width, a lot of different variables, like Sarah mentioned. So it's not as easy as just saying we're gonna put bike lanes in.
So does anybody have any questions, or, yeah, that's what I thought. I figured I messed up some of what your handwriting was, so. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't need a mic.
Oh, then.
I know you can't answer this, but what % of young kids on e-bikes and scooters wear helmets?
Correctly?
E-bikes, I think it's, well, okay, so I do know a little bit on this in terms of like the people who end up in the emergency department from like an injury. Because it's really, really hard to track it otherwise, right? Like that's when we get data, is when you come to the hospital, right? And then we can start, otherwise it's a little tough. For e-bike accidents that end up in the hospital, it's like 35% that wear a helmet.
That have a helmet.
That have a helmet.
How about scooters? Same thing?
Yeah, probably same or maybe even less.
What do you all see on the street?
I would say a good percentage, not even a percentage, but what we see a lot is you'll see not just kids, but any operator of these devices wearing the helmet, but it might not be buckled, it might not be positioned correctly, it's too far forward, too far back, it's a bicycle helmet versus an e-bike helmet. So might think we're doing the right thing, but in the long run, God forbid you're in an accident, it's not going to do its job correctly.
Yeah, I'd say it's come a long way, especially since I was a kid. I'm 46. I mean, I never wore a helmet, so we're going in the right direction. It's definitely gotten better, but still a lot of work to do.
I mean, it also, like, we run a bike bus for Riverfield, and I was shocked at the number of parents that showed up without a helmet to ride to school with their kids, and yet we're expecting our kids to ride them. I mean, my neighbor made some comment to me, like, about my helmet one day, and I'm like, well, if I expect my kids to wear a helmet, like, I need to wear one too. But it's really was incredible to see how many adults showed up for a biking event without a helmet.
Do you wear a ski helmet?
I mean, yeah.
Ski helmet insulated.
Right.
So like, people wear bike helmets for skiing, which just means your head's gonna freeze. So you can. A lot of people say, well, yes.
I would say.
That's also vented.
Oh, right.
And try to correct me if I'm wrong, it probably goes down to like what it's rated at, right? You know, there's a comfort level of things, and then but what it's rated, the impact that it's rated for is the thing that you need to look at.
I would also, you know, make it a little challenging to hear. So like, and some of your peripheral vision would be off. So that's the issue is, you know, if they had a helmet like that, like I used to wear when I was in four-wheel, you don't hear things very well.
That's something else we see too. The earbuds are in. I see people, I'm riding the bike in, now they don't have to pedal, worry about that, so I'm texting away. Yeah.
And just the AirPods too, not being able to, you know, hear a car coming, hear another bike coming, hear someone shouting at you, or whatever, you know, the sirens from a police car or fire truck, although the fire truck uses their sirens more than we do. It's all encompassing, right? You know, being just aware of your surroundings and being safe while you're doing it.
Well, even in the car, they can't hear properly.
Well, we know we're trying to get you out of the way.
And that's why you'll notice that the sirens in our cars have changed. We now put a low frequency siren there because it vibrates the ground, because cars are so sound deadening now. You don't hear us coming up on it.
So it seems like the laws haven't caught up with the e-bikes yet, and there needs to be some type of like best practice of how we're going to educate our kids so that they're safe and we're not in fear of hitting them. But there's nothing that was directed to us that we could put in front of our kids to say, here, watch this program, here's the education material, in lieu of a driver's license, which you guys mentioned would be great for that. So if we're not educating the kids that are on the streets, like, I think that there's a lost opportunity there.
So in Fairfield, there is some educational component in the schools, right? So outside of just general safety knowledge that is imparted by our educators, our police department teaches what we call SHAPE, our version of DARE in 5th and 6th grades. So 5th grade incorporates a lower level version of bike safety, more just bike safety in general, your signaling, you wearing your helmet, that type of stuff, riding on the rules of the road essentially. And 6th grade reinforces that a little bit, and there's been some recent conversations with the curriculum directors as to whether or not we can fit in more of that bicycle component at the 6th grade level and still hit all of the points that we have to meet the board's curriculum standards and what we're presenting. So that's definitely something we do touch on, but at the same time, we rely on parents to also touch on it and reinforce it and essentially be the primary driver. Just like educators, you know,
we don't have the resources
to teach, but it has to be reinforced.
So it's the same rules of the road that you have a license right now? It's the same thing?
Yeah, but you're asking a non-educated, like we're not educators, my wife's an educator, but I'm not. So and you're asking us to teach our children how to ride on the road safely. Like
So
should that,
I do think that, yeah, it's like anything. I like I said in the very beginning, I'm learning too. And how I've learned about this is a lot of it's online. Just taking the time to do research and to talk to people. Go to a bike shop, talk to them. You know, reach out to your local legislators. I know we're on all our social media platforms constantly. And it's not unique to us. Sarah, you shared a great article.
It is part of the I was just gonna say though, curriculum too, though. I mean, like the getting your permit and then to your license, there's a part of that is driving with your parents or a guardian or an adult. So it's similar concept. You know, I get, you know, we don't want to throw it all on the parents, but if that's not something that we can do collaboratively, then the child shouldn't have a bike.
I think the gentleman over here in the blue sweatshirts had a question of one.
I'm hearing a lot of negativity. I think, Duncan, you said you would not get your children. And my question is that because the kids just aren't mature enough and can a responsible, mature rider of an e-bike ride them safely without significant increased risk? Or is it just the bikes go faster, and because they go faster, all the risks that come with riding a regular pedal bike at 10 miles an hour are just so amplified at 28 miles an hour as you should do it? Or is it just, if I was going, just because the bike can go 20 miles an hour, it's going to have to ride it at 20 miles an hour? And is it the intrinsic nature of the bike, or is it a mature rider to keep it safe and not have to?
I'll give you my take on it. You know, I want personally, I want my kids to learn the rules of the road in a car first, which is way safer. And then after that, they know the rules of the road. Okay, now I wouldn't mind at that point them transitioning to something else. But I just feel like until you really know traffic laws, I don't know. I just think that there's a lot of risk there.
Well, I know this is for kids.
Personally.
But how about like a 63-year-old family? How about can he operate this safely and responsibly?
Yes, you can.
Or is it just I would never ride a motorcycle at 70 miles an hour.
This was one of my fears of. Go ahead, Kristen.
No, you go ahead.
So it's not all e-bikes are awful, right? Like we're not here e-bikes are not all terrible things. Like yes, I have ridden an e-bike. I don't like to. I just don't like it. But I have done it. There are members of the community that we have a member of the bike ped committee that they share a car. Well, they have one car for their family and they use their e-bike all the time. With a mature brain, I think you can ride it safely. I think the problem is that we see a lot of immature behavior from our children on the roads. And personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I don't even feel comfortable with my kids riding their bike to school right now. They're regular pedal bike on the sidewalk. I'm not gonna put them on an e-bike in the road, but that's just me. Kristen?
I just want to reiterate what Sarah said earlier, which is this conversation today is about risk mitigation, essentially. It's about education so that we can mitigate risk and we can have as few injuries as possible. And Dr. Latham, thank you, Dr. Latham, is an ED doc. So he comes at this from a very particular perspective. Our law enforcement and first responders are coming at it from a particular perspective. I co-chair the Public Health Committee. We had a task force last year on fatty liver disease. How many of you know what that is? Yeah. And it's actually one of the biggest risks to our young people right now today, which is childhood obesity. So we want kids active, we want adults active, but to Dr. Latham's point and to all of you, we want it done in the safest way possible. I have a road bike that's a 1993 Trek, and I have ridden that bike at 30 miles an hour. Downhill, sport hill. I love it, right? But I'm not doing it when there are leaves on the road, when it's wet and rainy, when there are cars out. To me, that's what so much of this conversation is about, the proper vehicle for the proper person in the proper place and understanding the risks involved in doing what we can to mitigate it. But more than anything else, there is nothing that will mitigate the risk more than engineering solutions. A protected bike lane is completely different than a painted line on the road, or even a sidewalk where there may be people walking. And those are the things that we're trying to do. They cost the most money and they take the most time, but they're the most worthwhile. So that's to me where I will continue to put my effort. But I think people can do this safely, but we're, as Christine said, we're ahead of things. And I also will just say, from an opportunity standpoint, to Sarah's point, this isn't about kids in terms of adults. In Fairfield, more people have cars. I represent Bridgeport also. Lots of people in Bridgeport are using vehicles like this to get to and from. And on the drive from an event in Bridgeport to here tonight, I almost had collisions with 2 scooters and an e-bike. So we have to figure out how to weigh the risks.
I think you made a good point, Kristen. We love when we see kids out, even if it's riding their bike, going to the playgrounds, going to the parks, we'd rather them do that than all the other different options that they have. But we want them to be able to do so safely. And these conversations allow us to have an opportunity to talk to you guys about what we're seeing, so that you all, as parents, as members of the community, can do your part to assist us in making sure that not just our kids, but our drivers, you as drivers, any bicyclist, any pedestrian is as safe as they can be. And if there are issues that we need to address, that those are appropriately brought to everybody's attention.
And Dr. Latham made an interesting point about how he wants his child to learn to drive first because you're safer in a car. So while we're talking about kind of complete streets and how to make our streets safer, because we, we all are in cars, and cars have changed a lot over the years to make them a lot safer when you're inside a car, but when you're outside a car, you don't have any of those protections. And so that's why it's super important to advocate and give support to road infrastructure changes, because those are the ways that we can protect people when they're outside of the car.
And to follow up on this gentleman's comment, we're talking two different things when we're talking about the adult brain and a child's brain. Personally, I don't think a 10, 11, or 12-year-old should be on an e-bike. If you don't want your kid on a motorcycle, you shouldn't put them on an e-bike. It's my personal opinion and as a public health professional. For an adult or an older teenager who does know the rules of the road, who has greater brain development to assess risk and evaluate their surroundings in a way to mitigate possible harm, I think they're a great tool to lessen the number of cars on the street, for physical activity, to get you out in the fresh air. I think they're great. But especially around Christmas time, for parents to really think twice about getting your younger children e-bikes or allowing them to use e-bikes. And I know it's hard having to be the ones to say no and putting your foot down, but it really does start with you as parents educating yourselves about what the real harms could be to your children and helping them make smart decisions that are age appropriate. I've already been to one wake for a teenager in Trumbull who died in an e-bike accident. I don't want to have to go to another. So, I'm a little biased there, but parents, we just need you to exercise and be the adult in the room and use the good judgment to protect your kids.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up, the formal program. If you have questions, you can reach out to our panelists. I invite you to go and check out the info table over there. I want to, again, thank everybody for coming and thank you for this community conversation. I think that we touched on a lot of important points about road safety, battery safety, complete streets, wanting to find that balance of giving kids the opportunity to be out, be active, be mobile, have a mode of transportation that provides them with some independence. But we just want them to be safe, and we want the other users that they share the road with to be safe. So thank you all for being here. I want to make sure that everybody takes the takeaway and take it home and keep it. It includes basically the main talking point that these experts want you to remember are all outlined in writing in this brochure. So use it, share it with your children. The conversation about road safety and teaching the kids the rules of the road, right there with you. As was mentioned, we met with the middle school principals. They were very receptive. Appreciate Superintendent Testani being here today, because I know that children's safety is first and foremost for him as a priority. And this is to be continued. So thank you.